White House vinegar get its name? Well, let's find out on this episode of Antique Bottle Stories. So we're going to start with Benjamin Franklin Board. He was born in 1836 in Virginia. He married Nancy, who was 10 years younger than him, and I found at least 9 children for them. Benjamin Board was a farmer according to this 1880 census, and he was also a Civil War vet. His business partner, Frank Armstrong, who was born in 1871, so he's actually 35 years younger than Board. He was married to Nellie, and they had a few kids too. Well, apparently in Alexandria, Virginia, around 1908 is when this cider vinegar business started, which is kind of curious because Benjamin Board is already 71 years old. This company is then named Board, Armstrong and Company. That same year the company is formed, Benjamin Board dies in 1908, leaving Frank Armstrong to run it himself. I wonder if he did that on purpose. I mean, maybe Board was sick or something and he only intended on helping Armstrong start it up. I don't know. Well, anyways, a couple years later, in 1913, Frank Armstrong changed the name of the company to National Fruit Products Company. Now, I thought this was interesting. This 1910 judgment says they intercepted 90 barrels of vinegar labeled Board, Armstrong and Company White House brand pure apple cider vinegar. Now, they came up with the name White House because at their factory location, they had a clear view of the White House from where they were at. Now, here's 1914 directory showing that Frank Armstrong isn't the president like I would expect to see. There's a guy here named Coblegood, and I've also seen it in other places spelled Coblegard. Well, he's the president. And then there's a guy named Dellinger, who's vice president, and a Dawson is a treasurer, and finally Armstrong is listed here as the secretary. So in this 1918 article in the paper, it says, the National Fruit Products Company, which operates in Winchester and Alexandria, Virginia, is about to begin work on the erection of a large canning factory at its vinegar plant here, which is already the largest works of its kind in the country devoted to the manufacture of vinegar. I mean, this company has only been in business for about 10 years now. It goes on to say that the addition will have a capacity of 100,000 cans of apples annually, and it has 20,000 more feet of floor space. Now, in 1920, Armstrong still isn't the president. It's still the same lineup that we mentioned back in 1914. Here's 1921, noting that the company employs 50 men, and it's running at full capacity. In 1925, a fire destroys the company. Frank Armstrong is noted as saying that the damage was worth $125,000, but it was insured and it would be rebuilt. Another source mentioned that the apple supply wasn't ample enough here, so they might not have rebuilt here after all. In 1928, this article mentions that the largest shipment ever made by the company, consisting of over 75 train cars full of vinegar, followed by 40 more cars of cans of fruit. In 1929, this mentions a plant in Lodi, New Jersey that is being sold, so they are acquiring and selling new locations, such as this 1930 article mentions Shenandoah Apple Products Corporation in Virginia was just acquired by National Fruit Company. And in 1933, they're opening a plant in Memphis. And in 1934, they're opening one in Harrisburg, Virginia. In 1934, National Fruit Products sued Musselman for using their patented process for treating apples before they're canned. The judge ruled in favor of National Fruit Products, stating that a guy named Eugene Grab invented the process and patented it in 1923. This article actually goes into detail of how this process looks. The apples are placed in a large retort, and the air and gas in the fruit is removed by vacuum. Then the apples are subject to steam, leaving the fruit solid and in excellent condition for canning. Now we're up to 1938. This one's talking about a new personnel office opening in Winchester, Virginia. And this also mentions that Frank Armstrong Jr. is now production manager. Frank Sr. is president of the company at this point. He probably had been for a while now. In 1939, a fire destroys a plant in Baltimore. It started when a pot of wax used to seal the barrels had boiled over. 4 people were injured. Now, this 1939 article shows some of the inner workings of the apple cider production plant. Here are thousands of apples being hoisted to the top floor via a conveyor belt. And then here's the fruit crusher. And this guy is taking a big swig of apple cider. And I thought this was interesting. This is 1940 now. A wanted ad. It says, "Wanted, apples for apple butter, sound, any size and variety, 30 cents per 100. So now we're at 1942, and another fire happened at the Winchester plant. 2 3-story buildings were destroyed in this one. Firefighters fought this for over 2 hours. In 1946, National Fruit Products Company absorbed a big corporation called Nouse Corporation, who also produces apple products. In 1954, Frank Armstrong Sr. had died, and Frank Jr. is now the president of the company, according to this article. There are several articles that I've come across that talk about the local fruit growers discussing purchasing certain divisions of the National Fruit Products Corporation. Now, I'm not sure I understand all the logistics of this, but it is mentioned in the paper several times. 1963 marks the 50th anniversary. Now, this is a really terrible photo showing Frank Jr. on the right side and his son, Frank III, at the Golden Anniversary presentation. Here's another article regarding the 50th anniversary, and there's Frank Jr. in the middle. We don't see Frank III in this photo. This 1967 blurb in the paper shows that Frank III is now vice president. And in 1971, there's plans to build a $2 million plant in Lincolnton, North Carolina, for the production of apple juice, applesauce, and vinegar. Here's 1972. Frank Armstrong III is on the right, and he's presenting a check to Southern Seminary Junior College. Now, Frank Jr. died in 1993, and Frank III took over as president. Then, somewhere around 2011, is when the Armstrong family transferred ownership of the business to the Gum family. So a guy named David Gum is the CEO now. Now, I haven't seen a death date for Frank III, so it's possible that he's still living. Now, White House is part of the National Fruit Company, and both companies are still in business. So here's a photo of the plant in Winchester, Virginia, how it looks today. So my vinegar bottle is a pictorial, pint-sized bottle. This one dates from around the 1910s to the 1920s. There are several variations of the White House bottles out there, including apple-shaped bottles and even green bottles. Although I haven't found a definitive dating system for all these bottles, as far as I can tell, in the 1970s is when they started packing in plastic, so these bottles could date anywhere from the 1910s until the 1960s. And that's all I've got for today. We'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.